midpoint when given two endpoints. And then, of course, we're going to test you on situation 2. Can I find that missing endpoint when I know the middle and one of the endpoints? So that's what we're going to be focusing on our learning intention today. I know we did a whole bunch of felt like random vocab words the other day. Those aren't going away. We're just pausing, pulling out that question. I think it was question 9, which was about midpoint. Might have been question 10. Might have been question 10 from yesterday's handout. We are going to focus on midpoint. And of course, if you are always checking the screen, which I hope you are, and if you were with us before the class started, you may have already added to your table of contents that C line. We're writing the word midpoint because it's our midpoint notes. So if you want to meet me on that table of contents, page 2, you can go ahead and add this to that. We're writing on that C line for midpoint. So I'm going to add it over here on our table of contents. We're writing the word midpoint. Sorry. Maybe Mr. Falk told you to do something different. Maybe he told you to glue this right on page 8, but maybe not.
I told him we want to wait to the end to glue it in because otherwise you'll be writing on a soggy sheet of paper and that's not fun.
Are my instructions clear? Let me know if they're not. If they're not clear, I need to fix them.
All right, so let's take a look at the front of that foldable. We
need to highlight some important information. There should be some color pencils. There should be some highlighters in those pouches. Geometries and art. We are highlighting the bleep out of a lot of our stuff this year. There should be some. There might be more color pencils than anything.
All right, so the midpoint. We already know about the midpoint because it was on our vocab on page 6 and page 7. Can anybody tell us, without looking at this sheet, what a midpoint does? Yeah, Riley. Okay, that's a good start. It divides something in.
Which way? In which way? 2. We start with the 2 because it's halfway. The midpoint is halfway. So if we take a full thing, divide it into 2, that would be halfway. Love it. Yes. Good concepts. Good concepts. Good concepts.
So midpoint is a point. Point that divides into 2 congruent segments. So that's the other piece we want to mention is that it's not just 2 segments, but it's 2 congruent segments. And that congruent vocab term meant that each piece was the same measure, the same distance, the same shape, the same size. So if Miss Green's over there, and I'm right here, more like maybe right here.
I'm sorry.
Duran is going to be the midpoint in between us. He is halfway in between us. So however many steps it takes from me to Duran, let's say 5 steps, how many steps more is it going to go from Duran to Miss Green? 5 more. Each side of that midpoint, each side of Duran is the same distance. So that midpoint is the halfway point or the in-between point of our 2 endpoints. All right, so let's take a look at the actual midpoint formula now. So here we have a lovely diagram. You have the nice, pretty colors. And we have a segment. How do we know that's a segment and not a line or array?
Segments have what? Endpoints. Endpoints.
Endpoints, yes.
Endpoints. Endpoints is what we're looking for. Points is definitely what we're looking for.
So we've got two endpoints on this segment, and they are telling us that that point in the middle, M, is the midpoint. In order to find the coordinate point for that midpoint, we have to use this lovely formula, where M equals x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And it's nicely color coordinated for you because when we look at the two endpoints, and we labeled the endpoints x1, y1, we are going to take our x values of those endpoints, add them together in the formula. X plus x. X's need to be added together. You cannot do an x plus a y. That does not make sense. Now you do have those colored pencils and highlighters and markers in those pencil pouches to help color coordinate your notes here. So same thing with how we did with the x's, we are now going to look at the y's. The y1 and the y2 that we have labeled on the endpoints. And we're going to add the y's together. Y1 plus y2. Again, you cannot do an x plus a y. That does not make sense. You're going to do a y plus a y, and then divide it by 2. And then the very bottom line on the front of your foldable, it says that you are essentially, midpoint is essentially finding the average of your x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. You're doing the average of the x, doing the average of the y. Take your answer and put it in a coordinate form, so x comma y, that is the midpoint. The average of the x's, the average of the y's.
And you know that because you're adding the x points together, dividing it by 2. You're adding your y portion of that location and dividing it by 2. It's very easy to find midpoint, but remember, all of these are points. They're locations, and a location has an x, comma, y. All of our answers need to have an x, comma, y. It needs 2 numbers, because a location, a point on a graph, has 2 pieces of information, the x and the y. That's why we're separating the x information, adding them together, dividing by 2, separating our y information, adding them together, dividing by 2.
Right. What questions do we have on the front before we look at the examples on the inside of that folder? Say again, Steve?
Average of your x and y.
Yes. Perfect. Average of the x and y coordinates. Okay, let's take a look at the first example when you flip open that foldable.
Go ahead and flip open. Now, there should be enough room for you to put all of your steps here. But of course, we always have extra room on that page 8. All right?
Or page 9. We're going to glue this on 8.
That's right.
So page 9, if you run out of space, you can use page 9. Just make sure you label and say, this is the extra work for number 2, if you run out of space on 2, or 3.
Although to be fair, Paul, I think they have a lot of room on page 8.
They do, yes. Okay, so example number 1. What is the midpoint of the line segment with endpoints at -3, 5 and -8, 1? Then check on a graph. So what we're going to do first is use that formula. Use that formula. And then once we get an answer, doing the formula way, we're going to do it on the graph to check to see if our answers match. So the very first thing we want to do is label our endpoints, x1, y1, x2, y2, so that we can make sure they go into our formula properly. Okay, so -3, 5, I'm going to label this guy x1 and y1. Remember, coordinate points go x, y. So my -3 is my x, my 5 is my y. That's my first coordinate, so I'm going to call it x1, y1. And then I'm going to call -8, 1 my x2 and my y2. Right? Labeling is a super helpful, important step. Because if you mix up your labeling or you skip out on labeling, you might be putting stuff in the formula incorrectly and getting a completely different answer. So labeling is going to be a super helpful, important step. Okay, I'm going to rewrite the formula because I don't believe that you guys have this formula on the inside of your notes. And it's always good practice just to repeat writing down that formula. So M, which stands for midpoint, equals, and then we're going to do a parenthesis. We're doing parentheses x1 plus x2, because we're adding our x values together. x1 plus x2. That entire top piece is divided by 2. Comma, and now we're going to do the same thing with our y's. y1 plus y2, add those together. That entire top piece divided by 2. Because again, we're taking the averages of our x's, averages of our y's. That'll tell us what the midpoint is. All right, next is to plug our pieces into the formula. So I'm looking at my x1 is -3, so that's going to come in here on the x side of my formula. And my x2 is -8. So I'm going to plug in -3 and -8 on this left side. So M equals, I'm going to do -3 plus -8. Again, that top piece, x1 plus x2, is all over 2. So we're trying to find the average of -3 and -8. Comma, now we're going to do the same thing with our y's. So I'm looking at the y1 is 5. My y2 is 1. And we're going to plug our y1 and y2 into the formula. So 5 plus 1 all over that 2, because we're, again, finding the average of the y values. Okay, I'm going to pause here for a second and make sure that we are all okay. Do we have any questions on setting this up? Okay, so now is where we can calculate. However, I want us to make sure we do the numerator first, Because if you put the entire piece into your calculator, it's going to spit out the wrong answer. So I want us to get the top of that fraction first. I want us to get the numerator first. So we're going to do -3 plus -8 and stop there. Get an answer there. Don't do any division until you get an answer.
You said what plus what?
We're going to do this top piece right here. So -3 plus -8. Hit enter and stop there. And then give a thumbs up once you have an answer in your calculator. So I know we are all checking out how to do this. All right. Now is the time to practice. Now is not the time to sit there and let others type it in the calculator for us. So everyone pick up a calculator. All right, again, thumbs up once you have an answer in your calculator. When you did -3 plus -8. A couple of us still typing in, which is okay. All right, what do we get? -11. So that's what I'm going to write on the next line. I'm going to write m equals -11 over 2, because I didn't do the division yet. So -11 over 2.
You supposed to write these things?
Yes, remember, there is room on the paper, on the page it's going to be glued in. Also, if you were having a hard time organizing your notes, no worries, I got some support for you.
All right, now we're going to do the y's now. So same thing. We want to get the numerator answer first. So we're going to do 5 plus 1 and get an answer before we do anything else division-wise. What is 5 plus 1? 6. So I'm going to write that in the next line. I'm going to say that is 6. Still over 2. I didn't do any division yet. All right, now is where we can do some division. So now we're going to type in our calculator, -11 divided by 2. Let's all try that out right now. -11 divided by 2. All right, I heard London got an answer. Let's see if everyone else can agree with what London said. What do we get when we do -11 divided by 2?
You have to input the distance or the direction, so is it positive or negative? Negative 5.5. I'm hearing a lot of negatives and I'm hearing 5.5. You gotta put that together. The location, it's not just more or less. This is saying I'm going to the left 5.5, and then we'll figure out if I'm going up and down for the second part of my location.
All right, then what is
Tell me
6?
where something is.
What is 6 divided by 2?
It's telling you where.
3. So our midpoint, and it needs to look in coordinate form because it is a point. It needs to be an x, comma, a y with the parentheses around it. So our midpoint is -5.5, comma, 3. Yes? Okay. What questions do we have on using the midpoint formula? Okay. Now it says to check on a graph. So what we want to do to check on a graph is plot our endpoints. Go ahead and plot your endpoint. So our first one is at -3, 5. So I'm starting at the origin, and I'm going -3, so that is a left or right? Left. So left, 1, 2, 3, comma, +5, so that is that up or down?
What you say again?
Positive 5. Is that up or down?
Oh.
Up.
Good.
So left 3, up 5. There's my first endpoint. All right, my second endpoint. Second endpoint is negative 8, comma 1. Negative 8, comma 1. So I'm again going to start at the origin. Negative 8. Which direction am I going? I'm going right?
Negative, negative, negative.
I
Well,
think I just
X
heard
is which
all-
way? First we talk about left and right. So positives to the right, negatives to the left. So am I going to the right or to the left? Left, to the left, to the left, 8 times, but we don't put our dot yet. We don't put our point yet because we went to the left 8 and then where do I go now? The 1 tells me how far which way. Am I going up? Am I going down? How far? Up. 1.
So left 8, up 1. Left 8, up 1.
So we went to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and up 1. That's my location. That's my point. X is always left, right, and then it's up or down. Remember, it's not more or less. It's where something is located.
Okay, so to find the halfway point, to find the midpoint, the halfway point on a graph, we are going to want to look at the slope. Who remembers what's another way to call slope? From algebra last year. And M, that's a good answer, M, but it's also the blank over blank, rise over run. So if we can find the rise over the run between our two endpoints, that will help us find how much we need to do for the halfway point. So for my first endpoint, how much do I need to rise up? And this is where I want us to use those bubbles to count. So how much do we go up? 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going up 4. And how much do we need to run to the right? And use your bubbles. Demetrius is saying 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Looks pretty good. So if we want to find the midpoint, we want to find the halfway point. What do you think we should do to our slope to find the halfway point? Bye-bye. 2. Cut it in half. Find the halfway point, we cut the slope in half. So instead of going up 4, what's half of that? 2. So we want to go up 2. Instead of going to the right 5, what is half of that? Find the halfway point. 2.5. So we can go over 1, 2, and a half. And we should end up on our line segment. And if we check out the exact coordinates of that midpoint we found by doing the slope, looks like we are to the left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half. Up 1, 2, 3. So left 5 and a half. That means I went left 5 and a half, so negative 5.5, and then I went up 3. What do you notice about our two answers? It's the same answer, it matches yes. So graphing and using the formula, both ways to get the midpoint, the halfway point.
Because remember, what is the midpoint? It's the point. How would you describe the midpoint? The point in the middle. It's halfway. So when we have a visual, you can physically count halfway on that coordinate plane, just like how we described before when we were in between a student. We talked about how many steps. If both we did 5 steps, then we did 5 steps from that middle point. Now, it might not always be as sweet and easy as that. That's why it's so important for you guys to remember, take your x's, add them, find the average by dividing by 2. That's your x location. Take your y values from both, add them together to divide by 2. It's going to find the half in this means.
All right, example number 2. Example number 2. This time we have a graph with a segment already for us. We are trying to find the midpoint of the graphed segment. So first off, how do we name this segment? How do we name? Say again. AB, and what needs to go on top of the letters AB? Because this is segment, we're going to call it AB. A line, could we be more descriptive in how that line should look? A line with 2 endpoints or no arrows. We don't want any arrows. Arrows mean it's a line with just a bar or no arrows. That's a segment. So to name that segment, it is AB with the bar on top. Yeah, what can we do on a graph to find the halfway point, the midpoint?
You gotta take that moment, I want you to think about it. We just looked at 2 ways we could get our correct answer. I don't mean to talk over you. So just take a second. Again, we looked at 2 ways. When it's a graph like this, you can use your preferred method.
Exactly, John. We did do 2 ways in number 1. So which one? Rise over run. Sure, I love doing rise over run.
I was talking about what he was going to say, the same exact thing. We can absolutely use that slope.
So from A to B, we want to find out how much are we rising, and then how much are we running. So from A to B, how much do we have to go up or down? And you can count using your bubbles on your sheet.
Remember, slope is, if rise is represented, is that left, right, or up and down? Which one's on top? Is X on top of slope, or is Y on top of slope? It's important, we have to know how slope is. Slope is rise. So which directions I'm rising? Am I going up and down, or am I going left and right when I rise? Up. So my rise needs to be my Y value. So which direction and how far, which way? So which direction am I going to go to get from A to B? Am I going to go up or down? Down. So we know, and what do we use in the math to represent down? What symbol? Negative sign. The negative. So we're going to go down how many? Count with Mr. Paul. The 2 people counted. Good job, everybody. Yes, we went down. So we went down. If we use a negative sign or a down arrow is a good visual representation. So we went down. Down is a negative because it's not more or less. It's how far, which way. Now, our run. We're going to run, not up or down. We're going to run left or right. So am I going to the left or to the right? To the right. How far? Let's count. 1, 5, and 6. Very good. We went to the right. 6 is right a positive direction or a negative direction? Positive. Very good. Where'd you know those?
So our rise over run is -2 over 6. We went down to right 6. And if we're trying to find the midpoint, the middle, the halfway point, what do we got to do to that slope? Cut it in half. So instead of going down 2, go down 1. -1. And then for our run, instead of going to the right 6, we should go over 3. Now, let's be more precise with our language when we say over, because over is that left or right? To the right 3, yeah. So right, 1, 2, 3. And once again, if you're doing this slope method, your point should end up on the segment. If you are doing this slope method and you end up with a point way over here, not even close to your segment, it's not correct, it's wrong. So you want to make sure that you are getting an answer that ends up on your segment. Okay, what questions do we have, for example, 2. Now, of course, we could use that midpoint formula again, because we can find out the coordinates of A, the coordinates of B, and plug them into the formula and solve using that formula, and we would get the same answer. But in the interest of time, we are going to look at example number 3 after we finish answering this question, because we actually didn't answer the question. We found the location, but we don't know the actual coordinates of the midpoint. So can somebody tell us where exactly our midpoint is located? At x1 and at y3, so we're at the origin, we go in the x direction 1, in the y direction 1, 2, 3. That looks good. Now remember, a midpoint is a point, so it needs to be in that x comma y form. So it needs to look like that parentheses. Your x value, comma, your y value, close parentheses. All right, if you put an answer 1, 3 without parentheses, that's technically not a midpoint. That's not a point. That's not a coordinate point on a plane. We need parentheses to say this is a point. So make sure you do not forget your parentheses. Okay, let's look at number 3, because number 3 is the one that is the one we are probably going to see more often. So number 3 says, if the midpoint of segment DF, if the midpoint of segment DF is negative 2, 2, and the coordinates of D are negative 5, 7, what are the coordinates of F? So in this example, we already have the midpoint. We already know what the midpoint is. We're trying to find another endpoint. So I'm going to draw a small little picture of what this looks like. It's not necessarily going to be drawn to scale or anything, but I'm drawing a little mini picture of my segment DF. Remember, D and F have to be the end points. And then midpoint is halfway in between them. And we're being told what the midpoint is. The midpoint is negative 2, 2. We're being told that the coordinates of D are negative 5, 7. And we're trying to find out what the coordinates of F are going to be. Yes, Akeem? Yes. We are going to show you that method. Because again, if I am point D, and Miss Green over there is point F, and Duran, again, is our midpoint in the middle. We know where I'm located at. I'm at negative 5, 7. We know Duran's at negative 2, 2. We don't know where Miss Green is.
I don't know where I am. I sure as heck don't. We're going to figure out where I am.
But we can figure it out because we know how far, or we can figure out how far I am from Duran, and then do what with that information to find out where Miss Green is. Let's say, for example, me to Duran is 10 steps. So then Duran to Miss Green would be 10 more steps. Yes, 10 more steps. Because a midpoint splits Miss Green and I into 2 congruent segments. So however far it takes for me to get to Duran, it'll take that same distance to go from Duran to Miss Green. So if we can figure out how much it'll take for us to go from D to the midpoint, we can figure out how much more it has to go from the midpoint to F. And we are going to look at both using the formula and the slope method. Hakeem asked to do the slope method, so let's try that one out first. So what we want to do is, kind of like how I did right here, through a segment, we actually want to draw that on the graph, where D and the midpoint should be. So D is at -5, 7. So if I'm at the origin, how do I get to where D has to be? -5 is which direction? Up, down, left, right. Left, because remember, X direction first is left and right. So we want to go left 5 because it's a negative. And then 7 tells me to do what? Up, down, left, right. Up, because it's a Y, it's a rise, and it's positive. So left 5, up 7. And I'm going to label that guy, that's point D. And we know where the midpoint is. M, the midpoint is at -2, 2. So from the origin, how do I get to where the midpoint at? It has to be 2 to the left, because again, X value is negative, so that means left 2. And then up 2, because the Y value is the rise and it's positive. That's the midpoint. I'm going to label that guy M for midpoint. And I'm also going to add a little note to remind ourselves that the midpoint is the halfway point. Midpoint is that halfway point. So just by looking at this and knowing that M is the halfway point, we should expect F to be somewhere around here, down in this area. Because however far it takes us to go from D to M, the midpoint, we have to go that much further on the other side to find out where F is. So let's use our slope to figure out where F is going to be precisely. So again, slope is blank over blank. Rise over run. So we want to figure out what is the rise over run from point D to the midpoint. So from D to M, are we going up or down or left or right first? Down, because we want to do rise, so that's up and down. We're not going up because M's not up. M is down. So we're going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Down 5. And how much do we need to run? 3, which direction? Left or right, or up or down? Right. Because run is left and right, and since it is to the right, we're counting right 3. So to go from D to the halfway point, we went down 3, or down 5, right 3. So what do we got to do to find out where F is going to be? Again, from me to Duran is 5 steps. So how much more do we go from Duran to Mesquite? Well, we just answered that other question. So let's answer this one first. So me to the midpoint Duran is 5 steps. So how do we go from Duran to Mesquite? 5 more steps. So from D to the midpoint, we went down 5, right 3. So what do we got to do to get from the midpoint to where F is going to be? Down 5, right 3. We got to do that same slope again. So So we want to go from M down 5, right 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then right 1, 2, 3. So that point right there is point F. Now, of course, we did not answer the question because we did not just want to plot where point F is. We want to know what are the coordinates of F. So, what are the coordinates of where F is located at? Say again, Mikhail? -3, comma 1. Do we agree -3, comma 1? Sure? So that means we are going from the origin left 3, up 1.
Remember, it's always written X, comma Y. X tells me how far which way in this direction. Y tells me how far in this direction.
Yep. +1, comma -3, because we're going to the right 1, down 3. So the point, or the coordinate of point F is parentheses 1, comma -3, close parentheses.
Remember, these positive and negatives are not telling me how much, it's telling me how far and which way. We are looking for something. We're looking for a location. A location tells me how far, which way to the left, right, how far, which way up, down. Therefore, F is at the right 1, down 3, because parentheses 1, comma, -3. That's what it says. That's why we love math. Parentheses 1, comma, -3 says right 1, down 3. We wrote all of those sentences with just those symbols.
All right, let's take the last couple of minutes to get this glued onto page 8. So again, you see the back where it says glue. You're going to stick that on the glue sponge and put it down onto page 8. Onto page 8.
We're gluing on page 8. Get that into page 8. Make sure your table of contents are up to date.